Okay, so my big goal for 2019 is to be on time for all the runs that I come to. Occasionally last year I was a little bit late, but this year I'm trying to be on time as much as I can. So to do that, I've come up with a really cool way for you to get changed as quickly as possible. So what you're basically gonna do, bundle all your clothes up like this, hold it out in front of your chest, and so there we go. That's how we get changed quickly now. So I'm gonna head out for a bit of a run. Let's roll the intros for this episode and get it started. Hi everyone and welcome to episode 3 for season 2. Thanks again for joining us each week on a Monday night. Big thank you to everyone who got involved in our weekly challenge last week, having a go at those cadence activities that Adzi talked about. Some of you had a crack at the 30 times 30 seconds, some of you at the 10 times 90 seconds. And it was really good to see the feedback that you gave us, and really good to see how many of you actually had a go at that. So stick around to the end of this episode. I've got another weekly challenge for you. So this episode is all about how to finish off a training session properly. So many of us plan our sessions really quite in depth. We go through the warm-up, we go through the session ourselves, and then often the end of the session kind of disappears without us thinking too much about it. We've often got other things that we need to do, get to work nice and quickly, get home to do something with the kids, or get to the shops, or pay bills, whatever those errands are. And we often finish a training session without putting too much thought into it. So in this episode, episode 3 for season 2, I'm going to talk to you about how to finish your training sessions as best as you possibly can. I'm going to go through 5 different ways that you can finish a training session in order to maximize and get the true and full benefits out of it. However, before we go through those 5 different ways that we can finish a training session, we need to go out on our run. So I'm going to take you on a quick little journey on a 40 or 50 minute loop that I did the other day. It's close by here, it's in the Narang State Forest. It's called the Goat Loop. It's one of our most famous loops down here. Keep your eyes peeled in this next little bit of footage. See if you can even spot the creator of the loop himself, Ben Malby, the original goat. So let's go. There we go, a wonderful loop, a pretty taxing and a pretty hard loop. It's got about 260 meters of elevation and 7 kilometers. The first few Ks are really quite difficult, but then once you get to about the 3 kilometer mark, there's a lovely sort of downhill section with a couple of smaller climbs. So it's becoming one of my favorite loops. It's a really good one to quickly bash out in the afternoon or in the morning before work. So the training session is done, we're all finished, and as I said, often now a lot of us get straight in our car and we drive home. We've got to get to work, we've got to do something with the kids, or we've got to get to the shops or do with all these other jobs, and we don't give much thought to that last 5 minutes of a training session. So I want to take you through 5 different ways that some experienced coaches and some experienced runners have told me that they finish off their sessions. And my little bit of advice for this is, when you're thinking about your runs, maybe even consider cutting your runs 5 or 7 minutes shorter, a kilometer or so shorter, so that you can get this 5-minute session in. They're really beneficial, and I think they really center us and they get us ready for whatever we're doing in the next part of our day. So let's go through these one by one. So the first method or first way that you can finish off a training session really productively is to go through 5 or 6 strides or run-throughs or stride outs, whatever you want to call them. So here's how we do it. We look for an area of about 50 or 60 meters, and we start nice and easy, and we just build up a bit of a pace, and we run through to the 50 meters, and we stop there and we walk back. We want to do these at around about a 5 kilometer race pace. We walk back to the start line, get our breath again, and then we repeat. And we repeat that 5 or 6 times, and that's why they're called stride outs or run throughs or things like that, because they're done at a slightly higher pace than maybe we've been on for our easy run. Now there's a couple of really good benefits for these. Number one, it develops an efficient stride. Number 2, it improves our cadence, which is something we talked a lot about last week. Number 3, it helps us to be nice and tall at the end of a run. And number 4, it also engages those faster muscles that maybe we weren't using during an easy run or a recovery run or something like that. And they make us feel really good and really fresh at the end. Now, these are something that I used to do a huge amount of in high school when I was running track and cross country. Regardless of the session, my coach, Mr. Tucker, would get us to do 5 or 6 run-throughs at the end. And I love the fact that he always used to make us do it bare feet. It's something that I still do now. Being barefooted really sort of connects us again to the earth, and it centers us back in, and we get a different feel. But when we run barefooted, it really allows us to be more upright as well. So maybe some stride outs is something that you can put at the end of one of your next sessions. Okay, so the second method, and probably the most scariest one of the 5 for a lot of runners, is to put in a little bit of yoga at the end. Now, when I say yoga, I'm not talking about the yoga that we often see on YouTube for people who've been doing it professionally or for 10 years in those bizarre and weird poses and things like that. That scares us as runners. But doing a couple of really basic introductory sort of poses at the end of a training session can be really beneficial. Yoga is an amazing way for us to develop flexibility and for us to develop strength and to keep our body mobile and to keep it moving as it should do. It is an incredibly good way for us at the end of a session to stretch out those sore muscles, for us to lengthen those sore muscles, and for us to give our body a chance to wind down and cool down. And one of the great things with yoga as well, even in those really simple poses, is that it allows us to focus on our breathing. So for that last 5 minutes, we're calming ourselves down, we're focusing on our breathing, and we're really just winding the session down beautifully. The third way that you can finish off a really good training session is by putting in a 5 or 7 minute strength routine. Now, I'll start by saying this. Probably only beneficial on those easy run days. You don't want to do this at the end of a really long, hard training session, maybe a speed session. You don't want to do it after the end of a long run when your body is physically fatigued already. But this is perfect for the end of those easy, low heart rate runs. So a 5 or 7 minute strength routine is really beneficial. Putting in some lunges, putting in some squats, some calf raises, maybe holding a plank position for 30 seconds or so, maybe some push-ups or sit-ups or a little bit of bicycling on your back as well can be really beneficial. It's something which I'm looking at doing a proper full episode on, but I think a training session or a little mini session like that at the end of an easy run, you do that 3 times a week and you build up to sort of 20 or 30 minutes in total for the week. So yeah, consider a little strength routine at the end of your next training session just to finish off the program. Okay, so the next way to finish your training session is to focus on your hydration and nutrition. As I said at the start, a lot of the time we don't consider what we do after our training session. So by the time we've jumped in the car, we've got home, we've done whatever we need to, or we're on the way to work or dropping the kids at school or anything like that, it might have been 30 minutes to an hour or an hour and a half before we've actually got on board some fluid and got on board some food. So focusing on making sure that you've got a little bit of a snack or a little bit of food or fruit or a muesli bar or something like that to have after your training session is absolutely crucial. And apart from anything else, if you bring some along for a couple of your training mates, it's a good time just to sit with your training buddies for 5 minutes and have a bit of food, have a bit of water or a bit of fluid, and just talk a bit about the training session. And again, it just calms ourselves down. It just winds the training session down before we get into the next part of our day, whatever that is. And our fifth and final one, this is actually my personal favorite. It's something that I've been focusing on a lot at the end of my training sessions. And this is one that you can put at the end of any session whatsoever, whether it be a speed session or a long run or an easy run. And this is just 5 minutes of mindfulness. Now, it's something which I think is absolutely crucial in the busy lifestyles that a lot of people live now. Their training seems to be squeezed in the middle of everything else that's going on in their day. As I said, whether it's got to do with family or whether it's got to do work or anything like that, our training sometimes can be very, very rushed. So I think pulling your training session back 5 minutes or 7 minutes, cutting that run maybe a little bit short, maybe a kilometre shorter, and just spending 5 minutes of mindfulness at the end of your training session has a huge benefit. It really centers us, it really grounds us and gets us ready for the next part of our day. And it's a great chance for you to simply just sit in a nice cool shaded spot or lie down, close your eyes, look up at the clouds or anything like that. And it gives you a great chance to focus on your breathing and to reflect on the training session that you've just done. And as I said, I find it really beneficial because it kind of just finishes off that part of my day. And it makes me feel very, very calm and very centered before I move on to the next section. So regardless of the session that you're doing, 5 minutes of mindfulness and relaxation at the end can be absolutely beneficial. Okay, so there are the 5 different ways that we can finish a training session. As I said, these were given to me by quite experienced runners and experienced coaches in ways that they get their athletes to finish it. So your weekly challenge this week is to choose one or a couple of those and see if you can put them into your training program. Particularly focus on those easy run days when you can cut it short by 5 minutes, the actual run, and put one of these in. So maybe you're going to focus on the strides this week, or putting in a mini strength routine, or doing some yoga poses, or focusing on your hydration and nutrition at the end of a session, or even just that 5 minutes of mindfulness, that quiet time at the end. And I'd love to know how you go with this weekly challenge. I'd love you to give us some feedback. Send us some pictures, send us some information about how you went with it and which ones that you liked and which ones that you didn't. And as I said, maybe try it, not on every single session, but on 2 or 3 sessions this week, and give us some feedback about it. If you've got some of your own ways that you'd like to wind down at the end of a session, some ideas that we can share with other viewers, that would be great. Send us a picture of those, send us information, and we'll share that around. Alright, so just before we go, if you're looking for a really good book that you want to sink your teeth into over the next couple of weeks, there's one that I can recommend here. It's one I've read many times before, and I'm just starting to dip into it again. It's called Run or Die. It's the book about the sky runner and the ultra runner Kilian Jornet. I listened to a podcast this week by Rich Roll, the Rich Roll podcast, and he had Kilian on, and he was talking about his life as a trail runner and things like that, and a sky runner. And it was fascinating, and it reminded me of this book. If you've got it yourself, maybe it's time to dig it out and have another bit of a look through it. If you don't, see if one of your friends has got it, or look it up on any of the bookstores online. It is an absolutely fascinating read, and one that might motivate you to get away from the road a little bit and get into the forest and into the trails. So that's it for episode 3 of Why I Run TV. Thanks very much for joining us each week. We really do appreciate every single person who watches these and the feedback that we get. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, or like us on Facebook so you can get these weekly updates. Whatever this next week holds, whether this is a big race week for you, maybe this is the week where you're going to smash a PB. Be brave in that race, go out and attack it, and you never know what might happen. If you're in the middle of a big training block, stay patient, control the things that you can with your eating and your sleeping and things like that. And if this is a recovery week, like it is for me, enjoy your recovery, make sure that you rest and you recuperate so you can attack the next couple of weeks. So thanks very much again for joining us. We'll check in with you in 7 days' time for the next episode. Have a wonderful week.